Now, as we were discussing, a decision on HS2, the high-speed rail link, will be made very soon. Someone who will be keeping an eye on that is Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester. He joins us now. Thank you very much for being on the programme. Boris Johnson and Robert Jermyn have been talking a lot about levelling up. What would you say it means about the government's commitment to level up if this HS2 decision doesn't go ahead?
Well, that's very worrying, isn't it? So there's a report in The Observer today that says it's full steam ahead between London and Birmingham. Oh, but there's a review going to happen further north. That sounds like the same old story to me, Sophie. London to Birmingham gets a gold-plated railway and we get a second-class option or maybe nothing at all. So for a government that's claiming to be standing for the north, I think this takes them into quite dangerous territory. So
you're worried then that Boris Johnson may end up kind of abandoning, if you like, some of the northern aspects to the rail system?
We'll have to see the detail, but there may be an opportunity here, though, Sophie, to sort of give a slightly more positive look at it. We've never been convinced in Greater Manchester about the design of HS2 on our side of the country. Basically, HS2 has been designed as a north-south railway. And when you come to add the east-west bit, Northern Powerhouse Rail, it doesn't work very well. In fact, the east-west bit will be at full capacity from day one. If you ask people in the north which one would they prioritise, most people would say, get east-west right. So, in many ways, if government ministers are listening this morning, I want to make an offer to them. If we can all agree that we now prioritise east-west on the western half of the country, get the design right at Piccadilly, get high-speed rail to Liverpool more quickly, then I think that's something we could get behind, because we could look at the prospect of an east-west railway across the north opening in the 2030s. HS2 is only planned to come here in the 2040s. So there is room for a compromise here, and maybe it's about taking the team who are working on HS2 north of Birmingham off that project and putting them on Northern Powerhouse Rail, redesign Manchester Piccadilly to get it right there, because that's the crucial bottleneck in the system. And I think if the government are minded to go in that direction, maybe finally we can all agree on that and the whole thing can move forward. But what I do have to stress, Sophie, very clearly is the north of England, in my view, needs new rail lines that go east-west and north-south. London isn't being forced to choose. It's getting Crossrail and it's getting HS2. So why always do we have to choose up here? If they build the east-west line, Northern Powerhouse Rail, early, in time they could then build HS2 from the north down to meet up with HS2 in Birmingham. And that feels to me like the right solution on our half of the country. And you know, I put that out this morning in a spirit of compromise to the government. And if they could agree, then I think we could all move forward on that basis.
Just to finish on HS2, you were talking about the need to prioritise the Northern Powerhouse rail link, potentially even over HS2. Do you think that people really get, people in government and in Parliament more generally, really get how bad things have been in the north when it comes to the railways?
No, I don't, and they're still really bad. And actually, the government are still quibbling about funding extra platforms at Manchester Piccadilly. Manchester is the bottleneck on the whole of the northern system. And so, no, I don't think they fully get that, and it's still miserable for people. But to be fair, they agreed with what the Mayor of Liverpool City Region, Steve Rotherham, and I said, which was to break up bring the northern franchise under public control and hopefully put it under devolved control in time. But on this question of Northern Powerhouse Rail, Sophie, yes, I am saying prioritise that, because if you build this railway first as an east-west railway, number one, you'll get the design for that right, but number two, it will open more quickly as an east-west railway, and that's what the public here would say. That's what they're crying out for. So that would be a line from Liverpool, Manchester Airport, Manchester, Bradford, Leeds, and then beyond. And you know, that I think is something that we could all support, as long as in time we build that high-speed line south from Manchester to link up with HS2 in Birmingham.
OK. Now, while we've got you, I'm keen to ask about the Labour Party, because after the last election, Jeremy Corbyn called for a period of reflection. But what we've seen is candidates for both the leadership and the deputy leadership effectively saying that the message was right, it was the communication or the campaign that was wrong at the last election. Do you think the Labour Party is really coming to terms with and getting to grips with that catastrophic election result?
No, I don't. I'm afraid it wasn't just the message. You know, we've got a top-down London-centric Labour Party. It's been like that under Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, Ed Miliband, and also under Jeremy Corbyn. And it was the message that lost my former constituency, which I'm talking to you from now. And it breaks my heart that I have to say that this is no longer a Labour constituency. But changing that position on Brexit, I'm afraid, to us, what I would say, you know, those in the kind of the London world were saying to the leader, that ignored Labour voters here, and they felt disrespected. And I've not really felt that anybody yet has really understood that. And nor can I say, has any of the candidates fully embraced English devolution. So myself and Steve Rotherham, between us, we represent 5 million people. We're Labour in office, in that red wall with other mayors like Dan Jarvis and Jamie Driscoll. But we don't get invited to speak at Labour annual conference. We have no nomination rights in this Labour leadership election. We had no role in the recent general election. I'm even hearing that some mayoral candidates for mayor are not getting any support from the National Party. So I don't think they get it. Labour needs to rebuild from here, from the bottom up, properly, listening to people. You know, we're bringing through policies, Sophie, that really resonate with people here. Free bus travel for our young people, cutting the number of people sleeping rough on our streets. You know, these are good Labour policies, and it shows you don't have to have a Labour government to do things that matter to Labour people. But the National Party, we're almost invisible to them. So that's why... Yep, sorry.
Sorry, you say that... I just want to pick up on something you said a bit earlier in that answer, because you say that none of the candidates really get it. Have you even worked out who you want to vote for then? Are you quite disappointed with the race so far?
Well, some of them have said some promising things, so let me just be fair. But I don't think they've fully spoken to what we're trying to build here through devolution. It's about taking power out of Parliament, out of Westminster, and really putting it in the hands of people in cities and regions like Greater Manchester, Liverpool City region. And you can tell I'm quite passionate about this, because I've been arguing this, Sophie, pretty much for 20 years. You know, I ran 2 Labour leadership bids myself, 2 failed bids, I might say, saying that Labour needed to kind of break out of the Westminster bubble, but I think it's still in there. And, you know, I'll keep saying this until Labour changes. We've set questions for the leadership candidates, because, you know, we need to know in detail, what do they think about these Labour mayors that we have? What do they think about English devolution? If we leave the whole question of devolution, the regions and the north, to the Conservative Party, we will be making a catastrophic, historic mistake from which we may never recover.
And just finally, do you think part of the issue is that because of the way the leadership contest is structured, the candidates are pitching to Labour members rather than Labour voters, which are often, of course, people who have very different sets of concerns? So that's why, for example, they're not perhaps criticising Jeremy Corbyn. That's why perhaps they're talking more about issues that are interesting to people who are, for example, younger people in towns, in cities rather than towns, and in the south of England.
I definitely think that's the problem. So it's probably one of the reasons why I lost to Jeremy Corbyn in 2015, because I was thinking that, well, we just lost another election, Labour people would want to win going forward. And perhaps my message was too pitched at the country and not enough at the party, and that's possibly why I lost. It's a tricky one, Sophie, to be honest. But I do think candidates need to speak to the voters. The voters are kind of half watching them at the moment and getting a sense of them. And their message can't just be for the internal audience.
OK. Lost communications with Andy Burnham there. Luckily, we were right at the end of that interview. Anyway, thank you so much, Andy Burnham, if you can hear me, for being on the programme. Always good to talk. Well, apologies for some of those technical issues there. I think we've got most of what Mr. Burnham was trying to say. That is it for this week. But don't forget, you can listen to the best bits of the show, plus some extra analysis on the Sophie Ridge on Sunday podcast, available on the Sky News app, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. After the break, I'll be going over everything